This is Lisa from Mobile Tech Review, and now for something the same yet different. You remember Vaio is back, not owned by Sony anymore, but run by some of the same folks at Sony who designed the Vaios that we used to know and love. The Vaio name is now owned by an independent Japanese company. We reviewed the Vaio Z Canvas at the end of 2015, which was an amazing, actually, very portable tablet with the quad-core CPU. Well, this is the Vaio Z, known as the Monster PC in Japan. In the previous generation, this is the latest generation with Intel Skylake inside, and you remember the Vaio Flip that was in the United States a year and a half ago we reviewed? It came in 13, 14, and 15 inches. Well, this is basically that design only with even more premium materials. It's a 13.3-inch laptop / convertible with an N-Trig active digitizer. You get the pen in the box, and it has a 28-watt Skylake CPU. So that's the more powerful CPU we've all been waiting for. We've seen the Ultrabook U series CPUs. This is the more powerful one. That'll also be in the upcoming MacBook Pro whenever Apple gets around to updating the MacBook Pro 13-inch with Retina display. Anyway, there's a lot of interesting stuff here. Beautiful aluminum chassis, carbon fiber on the bottom, 2.95 pounds, 0.66 inches thin. That's like 16.8 millimeters. It's expensive though. It's going to be $17.99 for the Core i5 base model, and it goes all the way up to this maxed out model we have here, which is $23.99. Is it worth it? Watch our video to find out. So here it is, premium product. Very pretty screen right here. We don't usually talk about the screen first, but why don't we? Because here it is in our face. QHD 2560 by 1440 display, IPS technology. Is it quantum dot, as so-called? I imagine it probably is. It's a Shinmei manufactured display. 275 nits of brightness. Now, and back in the days when Sony owned the Vaio brand, they were never the brightest on the block, but they had real pretty screens that were just like ooh and ah, cinematic for watching video. Same thing going on here. It's not the brightest we've ever seen, but it's adequate right now. The studio lights are not making it pale out. 78% of Adobe RGB and 100% of sRGB, so great for color graphics professionals. In calibration was also pretty good out of the box too. 770:1 contrast ratio. Pretty good black levels, 0.36 at max brightness. So just want to talk about that because it's a very pretty display. Good viewing angles on it, not the widest. You can see the lights are going to make it hard for us to show that to you, but it's IPS, so you know, it's pretty good. But more interestingly, the N-Trig pen, just like the Vaio Z Canvas that we reviewed, the same N-Trig technology here, pretty late technology, up to date in other words, competitive with Surface Pro 4 and Surface Book. This is included in the box. If you buy one of these, it has this capability, and just like with the Canvas, there's a little rubber grip you can put on the pen if you want to make it feel a little bit more ergonomic. It uses a quadruple A battery, and it's great for OneNote. It's also very good for art. But this is a laptop and an Intel Skylake latest generation laptop too. And most interestingly, this is the first that we've seen that is running the 28-watt platform. So this is the more powerful platform that we'll see coming up, like I said, in the 13-inch Retina MacBook Pro. Who knows who else will come up with one. Anyway, Apple's taking their time with that, and it's just a new CPU. Intel has just barely released. It has Intel Iris HD 550 graphics. However, none of our utilities can recognize it, and they keep saying it's a 540, which isn't possible. The 540 comes with 15-watt CPUs only. That's how the flipping mechanism works, and it clicks back in place. Those of you who have tested out the flip of old when it was made by Sony, the mechanism is even more solid, and that click into place is even better. Basically, Vaio is premium now. That's all there is to it. So this thing is not cheap. The base model with the Core i5 is $17.99. We have the top of the line model that's $23.99. The base model has Core i5. It's still 28 watt. The $19.99 and the $23.99 models have the Core i7, and that's a 3.3 gigahertz Core i7-6567U dual core CPU again. Once again, 28 watts. That's so unusual we're going to say it. 256 gig PCIe NVMe SSD drives in the bottom two configurations. The top of the line model has a 512. The bottom two have 8 gigs of RAM. The top one has 16 gigs of RAM. That's soldered on board on this. I know some of the old flips had a RAM slot. This one does not. In fact, like the older flips, this is not the easiest thing to open up. There's quite a few Phillips head screws that hold this on. There's more screws underneath the rubber foot over here, and then you kind of have to work it and pry it off to get the bottom off. So you could get to the wireless card, which I assume is socketed, and you can get to the battery. Now I say assume, usually I open these up for you guys, but because this is prototype 001 that we have here, you can see the not for sale stickers and all that. We didn't get to have it for a very long time. They asked me not to perform surgery on it. The bottom is inset over here. Again, just like the Flip of old. It's a unique looking look. This is carbon fiber here. Everything else is aluminum. There's our speakers right there. Some ventilation. The rear camera, 8-megapixel camera. You also have a front webcam on it. And notice it says very teeny here, but it is made in Japan, just like the premium Vaios of old. Well, now all Vaios are made in Japan, for those of you who are really into that, as an indication of quality. In terms of ports, we have a HDMI port here, an SD card slot. That is the charging port. It has a weird kind of barrel connector that just kind of feels like you're jamming it in there when you charge it, but well, that is what it is. Compact, typical Ultrabook charger comes with it. And two USB 3.0 ports over here. One of them can do sleep and charging, so not a huge number of ports there. That's your power button right there, and it's more firm and more pleasing to use, shall we say, than the Sony Vaio Flips that we knew from a couple of years ago, which were less expensive. So here's what happens when they don't cut corners to bring something in at a mainstream price. All sorts of little touches, like there's little feet right over there, so when you're flipping it and resting on there, it's little clear plastic, or plastic feet, support it. Volume control there in case you're using it as a tablet. Of course, it has a headphone jack too. So all in all, well made, very pretty. Doesn't show fingerprints too much either. Nice imprinted Vaio logo right there. 2.95 pounds. It's pretty darn light, especially for something running on a more powerful CPU and integrated GPU. That GT3E GPU inside is pretty powerful. In fact, in our benchmarks, this is benchmarking in terms of GPU performance about as fast as Surface Book with its roughly NVIDIA 940M graphics equivalent card in there. So this bodes well for Intel integrated graphics at the high end for the 28-watt line. All right, what are these other little doodads back here? You get a HDMI to VGA adapter in the box. Business users who have to use legacy projectors and things like that and monitors will appreciate that. The high-end model of this, the $23.99 model, comes with this. Sony has done this before. It's a little access point. The idea is turns your laptop into an access point, and it has an Ethernet port. However, you're going to need a cable adapter, and that wasn't in our box. Hopefully it will be when this actually ships. I don't know, because there's a lip on the edge, and this has been the story with the Flips. This lip sticks up and sticks out a little bit, so this actually can't go all the way in. Oh well. Now that we're looking at the keyboard here, the keyboard does not have a huge amount of travel. This is pretty skinny. However, it is improved again over the Flip, which was not my most favorite typing experience, to say the least. Short travel, but they worked hard to give this keyboard a very good feel. The key damping, the key travel is very even. Tactile feedback is good. They have an anti-fingerprint coating even on the keys, but besides the fact it doesn't show fingerprints, which is nice, is it's kind of nice. It's just grippy enough, but not too grippy. It's sort of like your perfect keyboard key texture here. Much as I don't like the feel of the short travel on the keys, I found that I typed very well on it, so it didn't cause me problems. No flex there. This is extremely rigid keyboard deck here. The trackpad is pretty good. It's not among the very best. You know, Windows 10 has raised the bar lately with the Skylake generation, but it's pretty good. I haven't had trouble controlling things or accidentally moved files I didn't intend to move or anything like that. Just not quite my favorite, but it's not bad. And it has a slightly rough texture, which they did by choice. This is actually a mica coating on top to give it that sort of texture. So some people like the super slick ones. I usually don't. I actually do prefer a little bit of texture. So that's what it has. Once again, an embossed Vaio logo over here. And this is a backlit keyboard, backlights in white. And to do the flippy thing, there's a release right over here. So anytime you want to flip it, this avoids having the keys facing out. That's the idea here. So you can put it in presentation mode, and it's, you know, the Sony Flip models have held up pretty well, despite the fact this looks like it could be a very precarious kind of way to do things. So you can use it in presentation mode. In theory, you could prop it up in tent mode too, couldn't you? And obviously you can use it in tablet mode, which brings up the pen again. Like the Vaio Z canvas that we reviewed, this has the N-Trig pen, and the experience is just pretty much the same, and it's pretty much on par with Surface Pro 4 and Surface Book. This is Clip Studio Paint, and I'm using the inking tool. Look at the nice, well, inky lines. You could do Chinese calligraphy with this. It's very nice brush painting. Has palm rejection, of course. I can rest my hand on the screen. And I wouldn't want to be using that 50 pixel wide brush to be writing, but let's show you what writing looks like with a 4 pixel brush. It's perfectly fine for OneNote, for your note takers, and the usual amount of jitter. I'm not a slow drawer, but you'll have a little bit of jitter on lines that you draw diagonally if you draw them slowly. Keeps up pretty well here. I mean, you've got a powerful machine behind this. So it's not the engineering marvel that the Vaio Z canvas was. That had a quad core in a tablet body with even more ports than this has. So I mean, that still gets the ultimate wow for me. But for those of you who need a laptop too, and a lot of people do, this is still pretty darn incredible stuff. Again, and incredible, costs a lot of money apparently. The laptop has dual band Intel Wi-Fi 802.11 AC Bluetooth 4.1 and stereo speakers on the bottom. Let's see how a video looks and sounds. We'll look at our Lenovo ThinkPad X1 Yoga review. This is Lisa from Mobile Tech Review, and excitement hot off the presses at CES 2016. We have the Lenovo ThinkPad X1 Yoga. 76%. There's no carbon in this one, even though this is based on the Lenovo ThinkPad X1 carbon one. It sounds a bit thin and tinny, but it's certainly plenty loud. And for a machine this size, it's kind of par for the course. In fact, it's not any worse than the Yoga that is in this review. Beautiful looking screen there, though. It really is a pleasure for content consumption, certainly. And it's also very good for media creation, not only because you have the oomph of Intel Iris graphics and the faster CPU in there, but you put that together with this screen, and it's nice stuff. Of course, you're paying a pretty penny for it, too, aren't you? Now, in terms of performance, for this price, you better be getting something, huh? And you are. Here is our SSD score. That is very respectable, and not all NVMe SSDs that we've seen so far have done that well. Again, this is the 512 gig SSD we have in here, but they all are the same kind of SSD, so we should expect to see fairly similar speeds. And here's our score in PC Mark 8 for the home accelerated test, 3732. That is certainly going to beat any dual-core Ultrabook. That's a very good number there. And here's our Cinebench score. I know the Cinebench is really dark. It's kind of hard to see what that says there, but for a Cinebench R15, the GPU test did 61.45 frames per second. Wow, that is really quite good. CPU scored 373, which is, again, better than an Ultrabook CPU there because it is higher wattage, but that GPU test result is very good. For Unigine Heaven 4, tessellation turned off, 1920 by 1080 set to high, 17.2 frames per second. There it doesn't beat the NVIDIA 940M, but it's not that far off. Total score there is 433, and it can't report the temperature on an integrated GPU for us. Geekbench 3, 3779 for the single core. Very good single core score there. Multi-core, 7854. So in the current Skylake generation for a Core i7 dual core 15 watt, we would see usually 3,000 and up to 7,000 for scores. So you get an idea that that is significantly stronger. W prime it computed in pi in 14.28 seconds versus 16 to 16.5 for a dual-core Skylake CPU. Good stuff there. So how about battery life? It must stink, right? No? Well, it actually doesn't now. I would have liked to have had an extra couple of weeks to test the battery even more thoroughly, but we only got this guy for a week. And this is a 58 watt-hour battery that is nominally sealed inside. Again, you know, you're not supposed to disassemble it, but if you do, you can get access to the battery. That's a pretty large capacity battery for something this small and light because Vaio says they use what they call their Z engine. That's their redesigned, ever-shrinking motherboard that allows for more room for the fans and for the battery, or fan in this case. And, you know, that's something that Sony previously was doing. A lot of the same Sony engineers are with Vaio now, just ever-shrinking stuff. They're good at that. So it's pretty beefy battery. Now, they claim 11 to 12 hours on this, and we've been seeing around 9 to 10. That's with brightness set at 40% and doing productivity work and some streaming video. If you're working it hard, it's going to be shorter, obviously. So surprisingly, the battery life is actually pretty good on this. Speaking of the fan, you don't really hear it, even if you're doing, I was working in Clip Studio Paint, for example, I was doing some work in Photoshop. The thing runs quiet, even when it's plugged in. Now, if you're doing something like running benchmarks, or you're playing games, or you're exporting 1080p video in Premiere Pro, you'll hear the fan, and it's a liquid bearing fan, so that means it's pretty quiet, which is nice, and it should have long life too. So you'll hear it, and it's pretty kind of, you know, it's a small fan, much as it has an interesting blade design to try to make it quiet. But what's wild about this is the minute you're done pushing it and doing a heavy workload, it just shuts off again. And so I watch the CPU temperatures on this, and they really do drop that quickly. The cooling system is very effective on this. Really impressed. Now the bottom is, again, carbon fiber, so that doesn't usually get too burning hot, but I haven't had any problems with this getting unpleasantly hot to the touch. All right, in case you're wondering how it does for gaming, a little BioShock Infinite 1920 by 1080 on medium settings. Remember, this is Intel integrated graphics, but it is the GT 550. And the frame rate is staying above 30. In fact, we've gone as high as 40 on medium settings. This is really pretty neat stuff, considering that there is no dedicated graphics in here. So there it is, just a little bit of BioShock. So in case you're thinking about, well, playing some games on this, it certainly is a competitor to the Surface Book for being able to do some what I would still call, you know, lightweight to medium gaming here. So that's the Vaio Z. No Sony in the name anymore, like I said. And it is certainly a lovely premium 13.3-inch Ultrabook with much more processing and graphics power than you would expect to see in something of this size. Of course, you might flip when you hear the price. Like I said, it is very expensive. This is obviously not going to be a high volume seller, but for those who really want the premium product here, need the pen feature and all that sort of thing, it's there. And they will, like I said, they said they're going to have a clamshell model also coming to the United States around $1,500. So if you don't need this whole flippy thing going on here, save yourself some money. You get pretty much the same idea, but sort of like the Vaio Z evolved. It was discontinued about 2 years ago in the United States. And there's going to be a Vaio S too, even lighter and more affordable too. I'm Lisa from Mobile Tech Review. Be sure to visit our website for the full written review and subscribe to our YouTube channel.